Welcome to our special Savings Month vodcast. July is National Savings Month, a time to reflect on our financial habits and plan for a secure future. But there's always a big question. How much money is enough? Enough to live comfortably, to retire securely with peace of mind, or to achieve your dreams and goals without falling into the trap of chasing more stuff? My name is Andile Jonas, Head of Marketing for Momentum Savings, and with me today is Paul Nixon, who is Momentum's Head of Behavioral Science. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, it's nice to chat to you.
Great. All right, so I've got a few questions that I want to probe.
Do.
Yeah. How much money is enough?
That's a big one. So probably two ways we can approach that, right? So one philosophically and the other one more quantitatively. So let's start with the philosophical one to get the juices flowing, right? So the Greeks had been studying happiness since the very, very, very old days. They called it hedonics, which is the study of pleasure, right? So they actually came up with this idea that there were two aspects to happiness. There was one more sort of short term, and then there was more a fulfillment angle, which is long term, right? Now, if we kind of bring that back to present times, there was actually a study done on something called the hedonic treadmill, which is the pleasure treadmill. Now, what they actually did, which was very interesting, was they had a look at people who were involved in severe accidents, traumas, and they had a look at people who had won the lottery. And what they actually found, which is fascinating, is that the people who had won the lotto, they had a very elevated level of happiness, right? And then people who had been involved in trauma. But what actually happened over time is these equalized. So the happiness increased for those people who were in trauma and decreased for those who had won large amounts of money. And that's why they call it the hedonic treadmill, right? It's this kind of notion that if you get more and more and more, actually it doesn't give you really more happiness. It just gives you more stuff, right? So it becomes more temporary. So it becomes more joy, pleasure, and your fulfillment kind of almost sort of fizzles out, if that makes sense. So where am I going with this? I mean, there has actually been a study done on how much is enough. A formal study, $75,000 is the number. It's been updated to $100,000 per year, right? So that gives you about 1.8 million bucks.
1.8 million is enough. Okay.
1.8 million is enough. Past that, you will tend to get on the treadmill, which means that the more you earn, the more you accumulate. You'll accumulate better cars, better stuff, more stuff, but you won't necessarily be more happy. The other side to that equation is the more quantitative one. And I think what people should be aiming towards is, we know the kind of numbers that say if you start in your 20s, you save 15% of your income. That should be enough to see you through retirement. But there's a lot of stuff going on in our brain between now and retirement, and that's of course the challenge.
A lot of what you're saying, Paul, sounds like behavioral science, and there's some interesting things that I've read about behavioral science about knowing doesn't lead necessarily to doing. Why is that?
Yeah, so I mean, we can probably say that financial education in general has kind of failed, and that is simply because it's necessary but not sufficient to get behavioral change. So what I mean by that, do people necessarily not understand that they need to save more? I don't think so. I think everyone knows we need to save more, right? But we have all these other constant pressures. We've got people that influence us. We've got our neighbors who just bought a new car, got a bigger house, or done some renovations to their house. So we've got this constant pull on our income statement from a number of things, right? We want to appear to be successful. We want to impress other people, right? And these are all parts, by the way, that sit in our inherent relationship and how our relationship with money is developed over a number of years as well, right? So knowing is great. It's necessary. We need to be educated, and the brain is not wired to think in logarithms. It's wired to think linear, right? So there's been plenty of studies that have been done to show that people dramatically underestimate the effects of compound interest. So just simply by asking people, if you've got $100 now, what will it be worth at the end of the year, at the end of 3 years, 5 years, and then 20 years? And towards the longer end of that curve, the underestimation is quite dramatic, right? Because our brains just aren't wired to think that way. So coming back to your question, Andile, it's very, very important to be educated, but the doing side, the actual behavioral change side, that requires some real self almost introspection. It requires a little bit of knowing yourself, knowing what your blind spots are, knowing what kind of your factory settings are, right? So what are your personality traits, what are your attitudes towards money? Those are the important ones, because those are the difficult, or that almost makes it a bit sticky to actually get the behavioral change.
Yeah, behavioral change. I mean, I like the point about people underestimate the effects of compound interest. We don't get that eighth wonder of the world. As
Incidentally, that wasn't, everyone says it was Einstein. There's no record of him actually having said that, by the way. So people love doing that, right, by the way. They're just like, they put someone famous next to something on the internet. They're like,
makes you sound clever.
It does. You
sound
actually get a piece
clever.
of that, absolutely.
Yeah. I wonder how I can monetize that for my savings. All right. I've got a question about, as we talk about compound interest, there's a return on what I put down now. There's risks and there's returns. But people don't think like that. People think in dreams and nightmares, right? So why is it that we think or respond better to a dreams and nightmares narrative than a risk and return?
The simple answer is because it's real. So that's how our lives work. Our lives don't work in optimizing risk and return, modern portfolio theory, mean variance optimization, all that kind of math stuff that comes in portfolio theories. Our brains don't work like that. And also people don't understand that, right? So there's a very good author, actually it's a family office in New York City called Jens Bringwealth, and the owner is a CFA chart holder, so he's got the technical knowledge, but he speaks about advising companies or very, very senior CEOs or senior members of New York listed stock exchange sort of companies. And, he spends a lot of time on getting to know people as opposed to, just pitching. So he takes you through his pitching process, right, because he's a financial planner, right? But these people are all worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So how does he differentiate himself? Does he just go there and promise a better return than the next financial planner that's coming? It's not going to work, right? So he spends most of his time actually connecting with people. So what does success mean to you, as a person? What does failure mean to you, right? And he recounts the story, which is quite powerful, in that this CEO is obviously worth $100 million, sort of wells up with tears and says, failure to me is ruining my kids by giving them too much money too quickly.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So that's a very different discussion to, I'm going to give you, a return of CPI plus 3, which is actually completely almost nebulous, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, if you can connect to that person's fear and you can stick with them on their journey, you're far more likely to actually have a relationship with that person. That person will take you into, so he, and I've seen this in many family office environments as well, they'll bring their financial planners onto the family council, right? So you'll almost be an advisor to the family because there is a relationship. You only get the relationship if you understand what really kind of gets that person going and what they're worried about, right? What kind of means stuff to them, right? So retirement is a goal, right? But when we tick it on a form, we have a financial planning exercise, it means nothing.
Yeah. What
does that mean to people, right?
It's a place in the future.
It's a place in the future. Yeah. Right? So what you need to connect to is the underlying dreams and nightmares that go with it. So retirement is the goal, but a nightmare could be, imagine if you don't have enough money in retirement and you have to go and ask your kids for money, right? So first of all, you're now going to place pressure downwards because now they might not be able to send their kids to a private school because now they have to look after you, right? That's a fear thing, right? That's way more likely to elicit behavioral change, like save more, than just ticking a retirement goal, kind of on a box or seeing a graph, because that's a real fear. The same with dreams, right? So your dream might be that you want to spend more time with your family in retirement. So your kids might be overseas. So you want to have enough resources to go either to live overseas, travel overseas, spend more time with them. That needs money. So they say money doesn't buy happiness, but in this situation it does. It certainly does, right? Yeah. So connecting to underlying motivations of people and real motivations and making things visual, that's a very powerful motivator as well. Yeah. That gets behavioral change.
It does. I'm reminded of a comment our CEO always mentions, Jeanette Marais, that don't kid yourself. Investing is an emotional thing. It's certainly an emotional thing. I want to talk about this putting money away thing. So I'm saving for my future self, right? It's an experience my Andile today will not experience, but Andile in years from now will. But I can't trust my future self. He isn't me. I don't know what he's gone through. I don't know what he's learned. I don't know what he's seen. Why can we not, or should we not, trust our future selves?
Yeah, so they've also done studies as well to show that when you think about yourself in 15 years plus, you completely psychologically disconnect from that person, right? So you have about as much connection with that person as someone you've just met in the street, basically, right? So there's a number of reasons for this, and there's a number of reasons why that leads us into suboptimal behavior as well. So it's the same reason that, and they've showed this as well in the studies, getting people into a room and smokers and showing them pictures of black lungs and these horrible pictures that
I've seen those.
they're terrible, right? But it doesn't necessarily get the change simply because why? People just think that's not me. That's not going to happen to me. I'm going to be the one dude who kind of, manages to smoke for 40 years and nothing, because there's always one example of that, right?
Yeah.
And they'll be quick, people who smoke will be quick to whip that out. But my dad smoked for 40 years.
He was 100.
Texan plains and he never got bronchitis, right?
Yeah.
So it's easy for us to hide away from that reality. So we don't think in probabilities as well. So the chances are, if you smoke, that you are going to have something bad happen to you. But we think in outliers, right? We think like, no, I'll be on the outside of that kind of distribution, right? So in the very, very small minority of people who don't get sick. So coming back to your question, right? So why we shouldn't trust our future selves? We find it very, very difficult to connect with that future state. We all think we're going to be the one person who lives forever, who doesn't get sick, who doesn't get severely ill, which is why we don't go for regular checkups with the doctors. Just we don't connect with that. We think that somehow we're going to be different. So they've showed this in a number of other studies as well, where people were asked, just in terms of making good food choices. So they asked people basically in the space of 10 days, what are you going to have for after dinner next week? Are you going to have fruit or chocolate cake? Of course, the vast majority, over 80% of people say they're going to have fruit. Right? But when the future becomes the present, you have a preference reversal, which means that somehow now you're like, in the negotiation process starts, right? So you're like, I'm going to have the cake now. It's going to be fine though, because I'll go to gym more, right, to make up for it. That never really happens, right? So they call that hyperbolic discounting. It's the same. That's the math behind why we don't think in compound or logarithmic terms.
You're describing my life right now.
I see some chocolate cake in your future.
Oh, yeah.
And mine too, actually. Yes, so we shouldn't trust our future selves because we always believe we're going to make it up. We always believe that we'll save more. We always believe that we're going to make better choices in future. But there are a whole lot of other things that happen in the present that sometimes create the illusion that now is better, right? So sitting on the couch watching Netflix, having that piece of chocolate cake is better than going to the gym because we'll make it up.
I'll do better tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oof.
By the way, so there's a study as well on that showing that people who commit to weight loss programs. So in behavioral science, there's a very powerful effect called the blank slate effect, right? Which is why people always try and get change on like New Year's resolutions, Monday, after a major health scare. So the blank slate effect is exactly that. But they actually found that people who commit to starting a diet on a Monday actually end up picking up weight. And the simple reason is because what happens on Monday is you slog through. It's very, very tough. Tuesday, invariably someone will bring a pizza to the office, something like that, and you'll cheat. And then what you'll do is you'll be like, okay, well, I'll start next Monday, but then because I know I'm going on a diet next Monday, I now eat everything in sight until then, and you actually end up picking up weight, right? So it's that it's that same sort of effect. I'll make up for it. It'll be fine. It'll be tomorrow is another place.
Yeah, I can see the guilty among you out there. So give me some habits, though. I mean, there's got to be one or two things that I can try and do if I don't know what else to do, right? What is the top 3, 4, 5 things that I can say, all right, if I do this, I should be okay?
So I think there's a concept in behavioral science, I think brought forward by James Clear, which is the atomic habits sort of system, which is the habit stacking.
Yeah. So
it's the idea basically of if there's something that you really don't like doing, try and bundle it with something that you really do like doing, right? So a good habit with a bad habit. So simple example, you might like listening to podcasts. You want to get fit, so you only listen to your favorite podcast when you're on the trip, something like that, right? So habit stacking is a way of trying to kind of change or just tilt your existing habits to kind of get you in the right direction. The biggest sort of tip I can probably give there is just get started, and the same happens with saving, right? So same happens with dieting. Once you've actually lost 1 or 2 kilos, you've now got something to lose, in inverted commas. I mean, something to if you cheat now, you've already gotten somewhere. So people don't like that, right? Because you've banked 2 kgs, right? So you've banked. Think of the same example in savings. Once you've started, you'll find it more and more difficult to actually mess up the bigger that balance is, right? So 10Ks, 15Ks, whatever the case may be. So there's things like habit stacking that you can do, but I think the most important thing that people need to do is to get control of their spending, because a lot of people out there don't know. So look, I mean, we can't shy away from the fact that in South Africa, obviously, there are a lot of people without income. Right
Yep.
now, if you don't have income, you
Yep.
cannot save.
Yep.
Right. So let's kind of put that right out
Yep.
there. But the biggest illusion I think there is that I'm not earning enough to save, because that's not true. The minute you earn something, you can save something, right? And it just as a proportion, even starting very, 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 very small can have very big effects. So if you've read The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel, I mean, he gives the example of a gas station attendant who worked his way up into one of America's most wealthy people, which is a net worth of $10 million. But this person obviously, was living on a very, very, look, remember, sort of, minimum wage in the US is very different to here, right?
Yeah.
But the fact is, you can save if you earn, right? Don't wait. You don't have to wait until you earn more to save.
Yeah, there's a mindset to it more than an income amount.
It's almost like a discipline, right? It's a way of thinking, a way of, because obviously something might happen, right? Tomorrow or the next day or the next day. So, there are rules of thumb that people can use, like the 50-20-30 rule.
Yeah.
So, 50%, no more than 50% of your income on big things like houses, cars, that kind of stuff, savings, and then contractual stuff like cell phones.
I like your point about not being tone deaf, though, that there is a reality of people who just cannot afford it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's also important to perhaps illustrate that we're talking to people with an income that can do something, but there are circumstances where you've got to acknowledge that. Sometimes it's just bad habits. Yeah. Why do we fall into bad habits so easily?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's neurobiology almost. It's, the brain is a prediction machine, so we really, really like certainty. We value certainty very, very much more highly over uncertainty. So I mean, just think of the COVID pandemic, right? I mean, all the crazy things were happening. People were fighting, like pulling out knives on people's toilet paper.
We hoarded toilet paper. We did that. My goodness.
Absolutely. So the world was very, very funny. It also shows you that thin line between, sort of total chaos and. But anyway, going back to habits, or not habits really, but certainty more to certainty, is that, if your brain, you've got a piece of your brain that actually its sole function is to predict what's going to happen next, and then to basically bank that into memory, right? So if it's a good experience, we need to do more of that stuff. If it's a bad experience, we need to do less of that, right? So that's called your locus coeruleus. That basically means, and they showed this in experiments as well, where people actually prefer 100% chance of an electric shock to a 50-50 chance of an electric shock. So we prefer, if something bad's going to happen, we just want to know if it's going to happen, right? We don't like that kind of chance situation. So, falling into good habits is easy because it's predictable. You create predictability around your life. Your brain likes that. Your brain doesn't like unpredictability. So, falling into a good habit or bad habit is just as easy as good.
I mean, that's encouraging. Falling into a good habit is just as easy as falling into a bad one. So I think there's some default thinking in our minds that the bad habits are easier, and that's why we have them. Paul, if you've figured these habits out, right? If you've got one or two really good sort of, things that you're starting to stack up as daily habits, what is good advice to those young starting out in their careers? When's the best time to start saving?
Yeah, I mean, the best time, if you haven't done it today, the best time was today. The best time was yesterday. If you missed yesterday, it's today. So, I mean, you should start as soon as possible. I mean, I think many people should probably start doing that already with their kids. I know many are. But I think these, going back into the habits conversation, I mean, if you can instill your kids' first experience with money is generally through pocket money. And there's the jury's out on whether it's a good or a bad thing. There's people on either side of the fence. But if you do give your kids pocket money, it would be really, really great to kind of split it up into buckets. So to teach your kids basically that, there are different things that money gives you. So you can use money to save. So a short-term thing, right? So what are we gonna save for at the end of the year, or middle of next year, or 12 to 18 months? Is it a hoverboard? Is it a skateboard? Whatever it is, right? Then there should also be an investing angle, because some other studies have shown that the best way to counteract this tendency of not being able to think in logarithmic terms is to experience it. So if your kids can experience compound interest, which is a long thing, which is like a 5-year thing, so it's an investing thing, they will be more likely to continue with that behavior, right? Because they'll have experienced it firsthand. So savings, one bucket, investing, so 5 years, another bucket, and then giving, right? So money should be used to make other people happy, simply because, even for selfish reasons, right? Because it makes us feel happy. If we give and we make other people happy, we feel happy, right? So giving and then spending. So also, it's not good to teach your kids to save absolutely and scrounge everything, right? Because that's not healthy. It's not balanced. So going back to the Morgan Housel example of the gas station attendant, I mean, the guy died with $8 million, a net worth of $8 or $10 million. Do you think he got the most out of life? I don't know. I don't know the guy, so maybe he did. Maybe that kind of warm and fuzzy feeling he got, sort of, putting his head down on the pillow every night was worth it, right? I don't know. But maybe it wasn't. So I think the world has also changed as well. We're not in that kind of mode anymore of, save absolutely every scrounge kind of, because we might get sick. We might not make it to 65, right? So there's balance. You need balance in absolutely.
There's, that age-old thing of being the wealthiest guy in the cemetery.
In the morgue, yeah, for sure.
There's something interestingly counterintuitive about healthy money habits, including giving some back, giving some away. There's something interesting there, especially for the young mind, that keeping every cent is not necessarily the way to think about it. That's all right. Let's get into some relationship stuff, shall we? Let's get into some lovey-dovey stuff here. Paul, I'm curious now. There's an ongoing debate, I'm sure, in every couple south and north of the equator about money in relationships. How people should deal with money in relationships. I've tackled this question before in the past in other interviews, but I'm curious to hear, for the couple that does it right, are they doing it individually, alone, or are they doing it together? How do they approach the money, managing savings, managing the future conversation?
Yeah, so look, I don't think it's very difficult to say that one thing is right or wrong. I mean, in relationships, there's only stuff that works and stuff that doesn't, right? There's no really a right or wrong. However, in general, you should be talking about money as soon as possible. By the time you're married, it's too late.
It's too late.
It's way too late, actually.
First date?
First date, totally. Why not? That's part of who you are, right? So if you're involved or entrenched in the right behaviors, then it should be part of. It shouldn't be a surprise to the person who you are, right? And if you kind of, I think divorces probably happen, and this is from psychologists. It's not infidelity. It's not. Those are all symptoms of uncommunicated expectations, right? People don't tell other people enough about them, and they say, what do they say? Let the crazy out slowly. I'm a fan of let the crazy out as soon as possible. Just kind of put it all out there. I mean, what's the worst that can happen, right? Yeah. It's way better to have that than the reverse, when people have to find out about your relationship with money and kind of what your views and values and attitudes and beliefs on are, right? So I think in relationships it would be a lot better if people communicated, even with like post-it notes, maybe on the first date, but a couple of dates in. So write down your top five values, right? So from money to career to, and if yours is if you've got a pink one and it's number one and it's money, and the other person's number one is family, you might have a problem. So that you can see where the conflict could come in, right? So the one person is, has a belief system that if I work up until 10 o'clock every night, it's fine because I'm going to provide, right? Whereas the other person might be like, well, actually, what would be more valuable to me would be your time. So, that could cause conflict. It doesn't mean that the person who works a lot is wrong. It just means that for that relationship it's wrong, because there would be many examples where that would be fine for the other person as well, right? Because they would have the same belief system.
That's right.
So, the point is just make sure that you're not with, or, as early as possible, and let me give you an example quickly. So a friend of mine, actually a very good friend of mine, this comes up all the time. So they go away, they've got 2 kids, both kids now are over the age of 18, and they go to Europe, they're sitting by the pool, mom is having 1 cocktail, 2 daughters as well. So every time they order, it's like 3 cocktails, right? That's 10 to 15 euros at a time. Mom is big extrovert. She's also dominant in terms of she brings in the money in the relationship as well. So the behavior reflects her preferences, right? Husband is an introvert. He's having a miserable time. Not a miserable time, but let's say he's not as free as the rest, right? Because he's doing the mental math of kind of, okay, so that's less and less and less. So, that doesn't really, it shouldn't work like that, right? So you need some kind of interim or balance. So you need some kind of rules to say, okay, we'll rein in the what's the limit, right? So because what happens with introverts when they feel like that is they can't punish by confronting, right? So they punish by withdrawing from a situation, which means that they're not present, and other people can feel that.
Yeah.
So that's not a great way to behave from either party, right? Because what happens at the end, what happens is that you have a more disconnected relationship. So if you just had a set of rules where, okay, the spending is kind of restrained, so maybe there's some kind of limit, then kind of everyone's happy. You're free, but within husbands, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. All right. Well, from relationships to business relationships, I think there's something to be said about the money conversation as it pertains to entrepreneurs out there as well. So you'll find some have a very overly confident approach and almost bullish approach to the business and how they manage the business, and others maybe an overly conservative approach. Talk to me about the merits and demerits of either of these.
I mean, look, I think humans by nature are optimistic beings, right? So I mean, that's why we invest. If we didn't believe that the future was going to hold sort of the promise of bigger returns or better things, we wouldn't invest, right? We'd consume everything now. So it's this promise that your money is going to grow, business is going to grow. You need to have that belief system, otherwise you wouldn't. Why would you start? So yeah, I mean, it's a. I think you need to be a little bit careful though in respect of overconfidence, because I think that that could very easily become something where you make decisions too quickly, or you don't have someone who's playing kind of a devil's advocate, approach to you might think it's the best idea, it's worth throwing everything at it, but seek the best sort of cure to overconfidence is seeking alternative views. Right? So if you really believe in something, there's plenty of information online. Go and listen to someone who has got the opposite view. Right? So if you believe in any specific stock, for example, go and listen to someone else who's got the opposite. There will always be, right? I mean, the market is made up of people, of buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
So as many bulls, there will always be as many bears. You just need to find the information.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree with that. Find the advice where the advice is that matters, that makes sense for your context. And with that, thank you very much, Paul. That's all the questions I have for you today. I hope that all our listeners and viewers have learned something, particularly during this July Savings Month. Hope to have you soon again.
Yeah, it's been good chatting to you. Thank you.
Thanks. And for everybody out there, please contact your advisor for more information or visit us on momentum.co.za. Thank you.